Andy Burnham has hinted at a tax shake-up if he becomes Prime Minister, while insisting he'll still stick to Labour's manifesto promises. In his first interview since returning to Westminster, the Prime Minister in waiting said he would honour Labour's pledge not to raise the main rates of income tax, VAT or national insurance.
There is some room within that manifesto for movement on tax. So if you take business rates, for instance, I believe there is a case for higher business rates on warehouses and the major developments we see on the outskirts of our cities, so that we can cut business rates for pubs, and I've proposed a 20% cut, and lift some high street businesses out of business rates altogether.
So this is the kind of approach that got Rachel Reeves into trouble, in my view, and I've made my views very clear on this tweaking of tax. James, what do you think? Do you think this is, I mean, it's not exactly kind of, rousing people from their beds and marching through the streets of joy?
I mean, saying you're going to knock money off your pint, essentially, is the oldest trick in the book for politicians, isn't it? I mean, fundamentally, he seems to have nailed down to what is a problem in the business rate system, which is that we have had a change in our economy, which is that we have these warehouses, we have these data centres which are taking over, and we fundamentally need to rethink that. But doing it in a piecemeal fashion and saying we'll give from one and take from the other is foolhardy, because what you need to do is think about the economy as a whole. And one of the major problems and one of the major criticisms that Burnham's had so far is that for all his kind of talks of devolution and localism and everything like that, he's ignored major sectors of the economy, like the AI sector, like the giant service economy in London and financial sector in London that is the beating heart of modern Britain. And if you're just going to take things in a piecemeal fashion, you're going to run into trouble, as we have seen already, without really thinking about the knock-on consequences.
That's the trouble as well, because you have unintended consequences. If you raise taxes on warehouses, and I do understand the principle that to a certain extent the online retail giants have got away with it, but you end up taxing the Asdas, the Sainsbury's, all the big supermarkets that have huge warehouses themselves.
Well, we've already seen huge problems. I mean, I know the charity sector quite well, and for all of the well-intentioned tax changes that Labour tried for their point of view, well-intentioned, raising living wage, trying to raise more from national insurance. I know charities which are basically, the knock-on effect of that is they can't suddenly raise extra cash from anywhere because they're limited in the way they can run funds. So what are they doing? They are having to cut services for disabled children because they can't have because their funding is limited. They've got to pay their staff more. They've got bigger overheads in their business, and that is the knock-on effect if you don't think about the economy as a whole and where you're going to target tax changes.
And that is the problem as well, because he's still hemmed in by this manifesto. There's no talk of an early election, and a lot of people felt with Rachel Reeves' last budget that she should have bitten the bullet and just said, I'm going to raise income tax, that's going to deliver the money revenue that I need. Instead, there are a whole series of complicated tax increases that were sort of hidden and obscure. But Andy Burnham cannot do that. Well,
I think it's more simple than that. With Rachel Reeves, it wasn't just so much about income tax. It was about the fact that the fundamental change that she wanted to make, which is to reform the benefit system, she wasn't allowed to do. And so they've got themselves in a mess from that point onwards, trying to stick to manifesto reforming the benefit system was a manifesto commitment. They didn't deliver on that, so then they had to try and tweak the other manifesto commitments that they made. And I think what we're skirting around here is actually fundamentally what is the democratic deficit that Andy Burnham doesn't seem to be acknowledging here. We're writing lots of stories at the moment about Andy Burnham on the basis that he's going to be Prime Minister, but I can't think of an occasion before where somebody who wasn't even elected as a minister as an MP, when the manifesto was drawn up, is now coming in and delivering a completely different agenda. It doesn't matter how much he paints it. This is a completely different agenda. The electorate are not fools, and this democratic deficit is something that he's going to have to deal with as he tries to make tax changes. Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fascinating. As I say, only 17 sleeps till he becomes Prime Minister. The other thing that he's doing is this whole number 10 in the north. He's confirmed that his preferred home will be the Manchester Digital Campus being built in Ancoats near Piccadilly Station, which is in Manchester.
The Times have a brilliant deep dive into the project today. It points out the 5.5-acre site isn't due to be completed until 2032, so that fills us with confidence. But the other big question is whether creating a northern counterpart to Downing Street would actually improve economic decision-making. There's talk about basically splitting the Treasury in two. Oliver Kamm has been writing about it in today's Times, and he joins me now. Welcome to the show, Oliver.
Morning, Ed.
Now, you take a counterintuitive view. You say, don't hobble the Treasury. In fact, give it more power. What on earth is going on, Oliver?
You find right across the political spectrum, not just fringe figures, as she now is, like Liz Truss or Jeremy Corbyn, you find right across the political spectrum the idea that Treasury orthodoxy is something to fear and castigate. Much of the post-war economic history of this country has consisted of governments trying to introduce additional decision makers in order to rein back Treasury power. It doesn't work. The Treasury is there. Treasury orthodoxy, in a sense, is an expression of two great truths. One is that resources are scarce, and the other is that things have to add up. Politicians don't like it when their pet projects are exposed as impractical. And much of the post-war economic history of this country consists of that essential point. So I'd rather the Treasury were in charge and strengthened rather than castigated and weakened.
Yeah, I think you list a whole host of economic initiatives undertaken by prime ministers going as far back, I think, as Attlee, of different economic ministries that were meant to take on the might of the Treasury. All of them seem to have failed.
Yes, that's right. The great example is what was popularly known as NEDI, the National Economic Development Council, which was set up by the Macmillan government in the heyday of British corporatism. It was called tripartism because it consisted of talks between ministers, employers and trade unions. That lasted until John Major's government. In fact, Nigel Lawson attempted to abolish it. And as Lord Lawson, as he became pointed out in his memoirs, no adverse consequences happened whatsoever. The Treasury is broadly a force for good. The one great counterexample is the 1970s, when it adopted a sort of rather crude Keynesian notion of multiplier effects from public spending. And it was the Labour government of James Callaghan, 1976 to 79, that injected a bit of sense into economic decision-making by cutting public expenditure at the behest of the IMF. The Treasury is there normally to squash fantastical schemes by politicians. Liz Truss tried to do without it with a scheme for unfunded tax cuts that we know were no part of they were no part of traditional conservative thinking, and they had a terrible effect on market sentiment and, of course, on her government.
I think the traditional critique of the Treasury is that they're just bean counters with no kind of sense of what the policy priorities of the government are. They don't look at the government's policy in the round and think, how can they be creative in terms of funding some projects which, while they might be expensive at the front end, end up delivering at the back end?
I don't have any problem with the notion of the Treasury as bean counters. As I say, things add up. It is their task to point this out. And politicians are prone, and this is, as I say, across the political spectrum, to the idea that their own favoured spending projects will have multiplier effects, will be self-financing in a short time scale. That was the premise of Trussonomics. It was the view of perfectly sensible politicians like Neil Kinnock, who did not just as much as, but more than anyone else to bring the Labour Party back to sanity after its huge 1983 election defeat. Neil Kinnock was on the Rest is Politics podcast just the other day, where he bridled quite reasonably at the idea that in the 1974-79 Labour government, he was a rebellious backbencher, much as Jeremy Corbyn became under a Labour government. But he said he was right on the public spending issue under the Labour government. Well, no, he wasn't. The only people who were right on the public spending issue were the Prime Minister, James Callaghan, and his Treasury team. If they hadn't taken action to cut public spending, then Britain would have been an economic basket case. The Treasury wasn't actually strong enough at the time to issue advice to that effect. The Thatcher government quite properly strengthened the Treasury, and it came back to sense after that.
Excellent. Well, Oliver Kamm, thank you so much for joining us. You can read his excellent article in the Times today and, of course, online. I mean, James, just to finish off this bit, the whole number 10 of the North thing fills me with complete foreboding. The idea that Andy Burnham's going to be on an Avanti train, which is inevitably going to be delayed every week, he's going to be knackered, and it's going to take years and a huge waste of money to kind of vamp up some out-of-town office space for his number 10 team.
Well, we see it from the private sector all the time, the attempts to decentralise things into other parts of the country. There are simple pragmatic reasons why it doesn't happen, and that's because you have a kind of... It's very difficult to get people to move their lives when you have a built-up experience, a built-up, expertise. You have the kind of economies of scale of having very, good organisations next to each other. It's very hard to move them apart and keep the quality of decision-making and the quality of expertise within a department.
It's an absolute disaster waiting to happen. But the other big issue facing the nation, which we're all talking about, is James Coney going to be in the pub at 5 o'clock on Monday morning? All of that to come. Welcome back. It's Ed Vaizey on Times Radio with James Coney. Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy has announced she and her department are leaving Elon Musk's X platform. Explaining her decision in what will probably be her last post on X, Nandy said the platform isn't healthy for our democracy and our communities, and I don't want to support it. A platform originally designed for free speech and expression now favours abuse and misinformation over meaningful debate. Jess Phillips was on Times Radio Breakfast this morning, spoke to Callum and said this.
I took myself off it about a year and a half ago, and let me tell you, Lisa Nandy's mental health is about to get better. And I absolutely agree with what Lisa Nandy has said. It is very, very difficult when you have the person who owns that platform talking up, potential terrible stuff on the streets of our country, and then for government departments to remain on it.
Sorry, that was Jess Phillips on Drive. I'd forgotten the Callum did Drive and then Breakfast. Anyway, you can hear Drive every day from 4 o'clock. Kemi Badenoch said that DCMS is supposed to counter and deal with misinformation, not run away because it's all too much. And I actually have some sympathy with what Kemi Badenoch said. I mean, given the strength of what Lisa Nandy has said, that X isn't healthy for our democracy, one feels that as a senior government minister in the department which ostensibly oversees X, she should be doing something about it, James, rather than running away. Yeah,
I mean, it's a great great opportunity to insert a bit of democracy onto X, and try to counter the disinformation. I mean, it seems like a completely wasted opportunity to me. I mean, we all know that X is a bit of a toxic mess. I mean, I always get mistaken for James Comey, the head of the FBI, so I get a whole load of abuse from whenever he does anything, or Trump does the latest criminal action against him. I get a whole load of abuse, so I see it firsthand what other people are getting up to. But if you're a government organisation, this is a place where people are having their say, and government should be in the places where people are offering opinions and trying to, explain what policy is. And the DCMS should be on social media. It seems backward looking to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think I do agree with you. I think that there's an element of, if you boycott, in inverted commas, a platform, you might drive people to other platforms. Apparently she's going to be prevalent on LinkedIn, which tends to be quite a safe space, as well as Facebook, which I don't use. But it does seem odd. I agree. You and I think I retweet, and I don't do many tweets, partly because I'm too lazy to. But I find X kind of indispensable, particularly when there's breaking news. You can still see reputable figures, lots of Times commentators, for example, bringing you up to date. So in that sense, although it's full of nonsense, you can sort of navigate it.
Yeah, and it's kind of mindlessly cutting yourself off from somewhere where you might get... And it's important. You don't have to agree with the opinions, but it is sometimes important to hear those opinions and see how you're going to be challenged yourself. And I think that's a valuable part of a democracy. And it's not like a lot of Facebook is much better frankly.
Yeah. Oh, I left Facebook about 10 years ago. I got so bored with the nonsense that was posted on it. But Andy Burnham is going to do a Q&A on Reddit this afternoon. I thought Reddit was even more kind of full of odd people, let's put it that way.
I mean, I think any social media platform is full of lots.
I've never used Reddit.
I mean, I have to say, as a journalist, it's an excellent news resource. There is a very, very intelligent debate on there.
Oh, wow.
There are people having very, very detailed expert discussions about things. Of course.
You have to join specific forums.
You have to join specific forums. Of course, there are loons. I mean, there are loons everywhere. But for if you have a niche subject area that you want to discuss, then it's a good place to have a debate.
How interesting. Well, there you go. Talking about niche subject areas, let's talk about the pub. Pubs and bars are allowed to stay open until 5 a.m. on Monday, so England fans can watch the World Cup last 16 match against Mexico. I guess it was inevitable, and it's probably, James, a good thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, let people go out and enjoy themselves. I mean, Monday is going to be an absolute wreck. I've just come in on the train into London and seen a load of Swiss fans standing on Clapham Junction Station. I mean, they played at 4 o'clock in the morning today. They're all standing there, grouped around. I don't know where they've been, but they look like they'd had a good time.
Yes, we don't think about the diaspora that lives in London. Of course, they are watching their games. I mean, maybe the pub should stay up until 5 in the morning every day for the World Cup so that every diaspora could have their moment in the pub, in the English pub. It's part of integration.
I think one of the joys of the World Cup, isn't it, is seeing how other people from other communities support their teams and celebrate. I mean, I'm not too sure that the pubs would have that much business in some parts of the country. But I think the dynamic, I mean, it's certainly the talking point of the moment, isn't it, is what you're going to do at 1 o'clock on Sunday night. Are you going to keep the kids up? Are you going to have a little nap in the day? That's my key strategy, is having a little nap in the afternoon. How are you going to make it through? Let's all pray it's not a very boring game, because otherwise everyone will be nodding off at about 2 o'clock.
I think I go to bed normally at about 10, so I think I'll go to bed at 10 and wake up at 1 to watch the match. But I do feel, I mean, I slept through Brexit. I don't bother to stay up on general election night anymore, but I do feel with this football game, particularly as we'll probably be knocked out, it will be quite enjoyable to sit up. But you'll be at home, presumably.
I'll be at home.
But will you open a beer?
Oh, I mean, my only focus at the moment is staying awake.
I mean, I agree. It's a tough one to go on. Do text us if you're going to be staying up. Lots of people texting about Twitter. I came off Twitter when my feed became filled with Elon Musk posts, even though I didn't follow him. That's true. He has used it, hasn't he, James, as his own self-promotion tool. That's probably the most annoying feature of it.
That is the most annoying feature.
You can't avoid an Elon Musk post.
No, I mean, they're everywhere, and also the people that Musk's organisation choose to project more into your feed. So it can be quite annoying to have an algorithm which is supposed to just work in your favour to promote more of the stuff that you like, actually find that you're being sent stuff that you don't want.
Well, there you go. Thank you for James Coney for joining me from the Sunday Times, joining me to discuss the news of the day.